retos tanto políticos como comerciales, los cuales nos impulsa a pensar en planes alternativos, ¿no? Tenemos que empezar a desarrollar otros mercados y es por eso que quisimos invitar a Ron de Canadá, a Esther de acá de Asia y bueno, y Karim hablando de Europa. Y bueno, para no dar más preámbulo, porque ya el tiempo nos está comiendo, Ron, si nos quieres compartir un poquito de cómo está el mercado canadiense.
Thank you, Rubén. So, how many here ship to Canada? Okay. I know everyone is very focused on the US market, but we have to remember there's so many opportunities in other parts of the world. And the path to those opportunities is how do you grab them and how do you find the right partners at the end of your journey of the product? Because everybody here that grows mangoes grows their own babies. And I know you love your babies and you want to make sure those babies get to the end use and someone else can enjoy them. So how do we get there? I want to talk a little bit about the Canadian market and what you need to understand in that market. You heard from Loblaws yesterday. I want to talk a little bit about the requirements. So when we ship into the country and you're looking at the opportunities in Canada, what you need to remember is the difference from Canada to the US market and other markets around the world is we don't require irradiation or heat treatment to the mangoes. It gives that opportunity for you to ship into the country as long as you're following good agricultural practices, food safety practices, and within our government regulatory environment, you're doing your preventative control plan with your buying partner. The importer of record must record for the government a preventative control plan that shows a traceability model in the event that there is a recall. That traceability model is extremely important, and the collection of the data in a timely manner is vital in the event we have an unfortunate circumstance with a product. We all know when there's a food safety issue that tends to impact a wider range of just the product that is being identified. If we do the right job in our traceability strategies, we can minimize the impact on your product if it isn't implemented or implicated in the food safety recall. So the key here is data, working with your buying partner, and ensuring that you can respond quickly as you move forward. Now, what does the Canadian market look like? We've seen tremendous growth since 2014. We've seen about 100 million in value in mangoes in the market, and we've seen a growth moving up to approximately 10% per year growth to 2023. Now this is all mangoes, not just mangoes from Mexico. Mangoes from Mexico represent in 2023 approximately $128 million. It's a significant part of our market, but not the entire market. Competition to Mexican product in Canada comes out of Peru, Brazil, and Philippines and Colombia. The collective share of those other markets has risen over the past few years. And I think this is a warning sign for the Mexican producer and the Mexican market. And it goes back to some of the things we heard yesterday about opportunities for promotion, opportunities for developing the market, because Canadians love mangoes. And you have an opportunity to grow and expand that market and drive forward and recapture some of the market that the other jurisdictions have claimed. Now, you wouldn't think Canada exports. We have a very, very small export market, about 3.4 million. It's all value added. So dried mango or frozen mango, and it has declined in the last year, but we did see a growth. The pandemic was very hard on this industry. And what's interesting, I'll show some slides about what the consumer thinks of mangoes. During the pandemic, when people had money, mangoes actually did very well. But it's the impact of food inflation that I'll talk about in a moment that is a challenge that we're still dealing with. Food inflation over the past 3 years has been an extreme challenge to specialty items. Mango, when we ask Canadian consumers, what are your top 3 specialty items? Mango, or top 10 specialty items, mango is the top 3. Above mangoes, you have, pineapple and avocados. So the opportunity to recapture the sales growth is key. What we've seen over the past few years is a rebound. So food inflation, Canadians were very, very aware of what they were spending on their groceries. And today, we have an election happening next year. The number one issue is the cost of food for Canadians. The cost of living, buying a house. You need to recognize that when you're selling into the Canadian market, because your buyer, whether a wholesaler or a retailer, you may say, oh, they're so hard on me. They're so hard on my price. But the reality is, they're only reacting to the consumer in Canada and how that consumer is reacting to the impact of food inflation. We're beginning to rebound, but it's still influencing their behavior. Now, what does that behavior look like? Well, we see a strong growth. We have a market penetration of about 23%. And the important thing to look at here is who is buying your mangoes. We have a very strong focus. Let me go back. We have a very strong focus on younger generation. This younger generation, and especially males who have slightly higher interest in purchasing mangoes, is vital to understanding where they shop and the opportunity to sell them the right size product. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that because it's high income, and this goes back to food inflation. So today, consumers with a high income and younger consumers with disposable income in Canada have a greater interest in purchasing the product. Now, who are they buying it from? This is a very quick photo of the Canadian buying market and showing retail, major retail, showing the independents, showing location from east to west. And this is important because Western Canada is different from Central Canada and different from Eastern Canada. Who here knows where the highest sales and consumption of mangoes and specialty fruit is in Canada? Quebec. Eastern Canada declines because Eastern Canada have less money. The salaries are lower in Eastern Canada. So it directly links into that consumer who is a higher wage and a younger consumer willing to spend the money. What's important here is the wholesalers. If you have not sold into the market, or you sold once and you had a bad experience, don't let that discourage you. We have tools in Canada that can help you. The CPMA, connecting you with the right businesses, and then a group called the Fruit and Vegetable Dispute Resolution Corporation, like PACA in the US, which helps you navigate a dispute if you don't agree with what your buyer is saying when you ship your product to the country. You have to use these tools because not always does the product arrive in good condition. If you're a wholesaler or selling to a wholesaler, they have the opportunity to repack for you instead of a retail rejection right away. So you have to focus on where and who you sell to and the size of your company to make sure you protect your product entering the market. Now, my retail partners in the room are going to look at this from Canada going, what is Ron saying? This is consumer information. When we survey consumers every month, asking them, what's your interest? Where would you want to buy mangoes? And the interesting thing they see is the opportunity for purchasing mangoes and the preferred purchase is 44% more at club stores. Why is that? So think about food inflation, think about pack size, think about value. They're thinking and psychologically going in and saying, I'm going to get greater value, and a younger generation having more money can go in and buy that product in higher volume, go home and enjoy it. When you see, like Loblaws, who was on stage yesterday, when they put an ad on or where they sell a box of mangoes on special, you see volume sales increase. What this doesn't represent is total sales across the country. There are only so many club stores, right? You look at Sobeys, you look at Loblaws with more storefronts, more opportunities with discount banners, retail merchandise, mass merchandising banners, and so on. So you have to understand the type of product you're selling in, the pack size you're selling in. But what this is telling you is consumers are still looking at discount and club when they're thinking about their purchase preference on mangoes. And this is, again, a breakdown of our, when we ask consumers, where are you having a preference on purchasing? And you see Walmart. Why? This isn't talking about better merchandising or better dynamic. This is sure about the product size, the price, and access to the product coming into the country. Now, I won't go through all of these key principles, but these are basically the highlights of what I just talked to. These slides, if you're interested in them, are available for after the conference, or if you'd like to email me. I think the opportunity here is simple. If we look at mango growth in Canada, I think we have to look at a very simple approach. And that is, coming out of the pandemic, we saw food inflation, we saw consumers tightening up their spend. We have an opportunity to grow sales for mangoes, but the Canadian consumer needs to understand how to pick their mango, how to eat their mango, and have to know how to prepare and how to add it to other meals. We'll talk a little more about some of those strategies, but Canadians are only beginning their mango journey. They're only beginning an opportunity to grow and enjoy mangoes. Every mango grower, exporter in this room has an opportunity to build that market in Canada. You have to find the right partner, and you have to find the right strategy to sell your product into the country and enjoy the benefits of what the Canadian market has to offer. And remember, we're only 40 million people, but we're very diverse in population, very culturally diverse, and that diverse culture wants a very diverse range of fruit and vegetables, and mango fits perfectly in that range. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ron, for your presentation. Well, now after learning about Canada market, okay, well, let's switch to Spanish. Bueno, muchas gracias, Ron, por tu presentación. Al final tendremos la sesión de preguntas y respuestas. Tenemos ahí unos, seguramente mucho interés por parte de la audiencia. Ahora, Karin, si nos gustas compartir un poquito del mercado europeo. Ahora sí que muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Rubén, and also thank you very much to MX for today's invitation. I hope you can hear me well. I kind of hear myself twice, but should be good. So, Holland Mexico, like we said, is the Chamber of Commerce, and for me it's a true honor to be here today to represent the Netherlands and also some parts of Europe. What I want to cover today really is more about the potential of the European market. So before I really get into it, I was wondering, whom of you already exports to Europe? If you can show my hands, so I see a few hands. And 4. And who of you exports to the Netherlands? Same hands. That's good. Thank you so much. Did it? Oh, we're good. So when we talk about Europe, and that's why I put this slide into the deck today, we are sometimes a little bit confused about who we're referring to. So Europe is the whole continent, as you see here with all of the different colors, whereas the European Union only refers to 27 of these countries. Particularly the dark blue ones. And then there are some, well, there's England that's no longer a part, and others that have special status or are in the process of becoming part of the European Union. So when I say Europe, I usually refer to the European Union, but it's something to bear in mind. So the main ports in Europe are Rotterdam in the Netherlands, Hamburg and Antwerp. And since 2000, there's a trade agreement between the EU and Mexico. So at the bottom it says that it's in the process of being ratified, a new trade agreement. I remember 5 years ago that I also gave a presentation and I said the same thing. So it's taking some time, but we do expect some movement in the next 1 or 2 years. And with that, even there should be an even more easy customs process as there is nowadays. So we really hope for that. So like I said, 27 countries in the EU means that there are also 27 different cultures. So we just heard from Ron that the Canadian is a very varied market with lots of people of different backgrounds. But in Europe, it's even more so. So if I look at the Netherlands in comparison to Germany, so even though we are neighbors, we are very different in our ways of doing business, in the consumer behavior, in everything. So this map kind of looks like the weather or climate, and it gives some image of the differences in culture that we have. So if we look at the red colors, we find Mexico there. So that's a very warm culture, but also very, how should I say it? Well, they're very friendly, of course, but very impulsive also. And a lot of decisions are made from the heart. Whereas in the blue corner that we have, particularly in the north of Europe, it's very factual. So when you do business with any of these countries, this is something important to bear in mind. How are you going to convince your possible partner? What is important to them? So if you would like to know more about that, then come find me after this conversation. I'd love to tell you a little bit more, but it's definitely important. So, what do we have in the Netherlands? Well, I think that we are famous for a very strong economy. We are one of the most diversified economies in the world. We are really big on international business, but also on technology, on advanced agriculture and horticulture, and also in finance. When we look at the consumers, well, we, in the Netherlands at least, usually look for sophisticated flavors, gourmet products. Also sustainability is a very important one. Organic products, vegan products are also being very much on the rise. And at the same time, we are a very attractive market with lots of room for Mexican products, for sure. So what makes us really stand out from other countries in Europe is our infrastructure and our geographical location. We are a center of commerce for the rest of Europe. And it even goes to say that 89 of the 100% of exports, 89 is being re-exported to other parts of Europe. And mainly the European Union, but also England. And when we look at food and beverages, we speak about 50% in general. And when referring to mangoes, it's a little bit different, but we'll see that on some of the next slides. So when you look at the world trades in mangoes, the top 3 is obviously the US, then China, so no surprises there, and then the third one is the Netherlands. It's significantly smaller, yes, but it's still one of the big top 3. And I'll get a little bit more zoomed into the Netherlands here. So on the left, you'll see a graph of the import value. Let's see if oh, that's the wrong button. Oops, this one. There. No. They told me this was easy, but no, it's too hard for me. I hope you can still see it. So on the left, you'll see the import value. So in 2023, we're talking about $312 million. And on the, well, you see a bit of a dip around 2021, 2022, which was the pandemic. But when you look at the import volume, you see the dip isn't that large. And there's still overall growth in mango imports in the Netherlands. So then I'd like to talk a little bit about, worldwide, where does mango come from? So the biggest ones is obviously Mexico to the US. Thailand to China is also a very important source of mangoes. And then there is the Netherlands that sources primarily from Peru and Brazil, as you can see here. And then there's something interesting on the right side of this graph, but I'll get into that in a second. So here we look at the imports of origin in the Netherlands over the past few years. And you see again, Brazil and Peru by far the biggest. Then there are a few small ones, Dominican Republic, Ivory Coast. And then the next one is Germany, that obviously doesn't produce any mango. So where's Mexico? This is data from 2023. And you see that Mexico is on the 13th place of importers in the Netherlands. But you also see it's 0.73% of the total imports. So that's not very much. In fact, if we look at the numbers from the past 5 years, we even see that there was an increase in imports from Mexico over 2020, and then we went back to the numbers from before. So, having a look at exports of mango, I hope this is a bit of a surprise to you. So the first one is Thailand, which we saw on the other slide. Then there's Mexico, obviously. And the third biggest exporter in the world is the Netherlands. Meaning that most of what is imported in the Netherlands is then re-exported. In total, we're talking about $381 million. So where is it exported to? And apologies, because this is also a little bit of Dutch. So the truck in the picture is from 2022, actually. So in 2022, there was $288 million of offset on the European market, well, from the Netherlands. And that went primarily to Germany, 30%, then to France. The next one was for the Netherlands, 7% only, Belgium, Russia, Spain, and then all the other countries, including some beyond Europe even. And then in the top, you will see, again, the trade flows, but then for 2023. So then it's again, Germany is the largest one, then France, Russia, and some other countries. And in the bottom, I made a small comparison about what is being imported and what is being exported. And you can see that a lot of value is added also in the Netherlands. So I put in this last slide because there are some wonderful tools created by the European Union that can really help you get to know more about the European market, understand what is required, what the origin rules are, if there are any tariffs that apply. There are not, just so you know. The certifications that you might need, because if you do want to export, at least to the Netherlands, you will need to have Global Gap and probably also some type of social certifications such as Rainforest Alliance or SMETA. And you can really easily find all sorts of information here also about what needs to go in the labeling, really any relevant information for you to look up and to see what you need to make this first export viable. So I'd like to kind of leave it at that for now, and we'll talk more in a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Kathleen, okay. Okay, thank you very much. Well, now let's talk about Asia. So Esther, please enlighten us what's happening over there.
Hi, I'm Esther and I'm from Singapore. So today I want to talk about opportunities that you can find in Asia for Mexico mangoes. So I am from Dimuto, which is an agri-tech startup in Singapore, but I mainly look at the sales all across Asia and procurement. So I tag team with my Latin American colleagues here, and we kind of do a 24/7. Whenever you need us, we will be able to reply you. And if you have any questions, you can always look for my colleague Rubén over there later. So let's first talk about the top 5 mango, guava, and mangosteen producing countries. You'll see that Mexico is at number 5. India is number 1, and then followed by Indonesia at number 2. So the reason why I showed it like that is because a lot of government agencies actually look at these 3 fruits as one category. So that's how we are presenting the information today. So next we have the exporting countries. You see that Mexico is actually number 1. India and China. China is not even in the top 5. So why is that? It's because their own domestic demand is super high. So that's why we have a chance for Mexico Mexico to enter Asia, especially now when, especially for China, where the demand is higher than what they can produce. So they are really buying a lot of mangoes. So these are the biggest importers in Asia currently. You'll see Korea and Japan at the top. And then you will have Hong Kong and Singapore. So you also have the import value per population, which means how much each person in the country would be spending on mangoes, guavas, and mangosteens in a year. Yeah. So one of the reasons why Singapore and Hong Kong is actually even on the list here, Japan and Korea as well, is because they themselves do not produce mangoes. But mangoes are becoming a very big trend in terms of desserts, in terms of just eating or gifting in Asia. So it is primarily produced in Southeast Asia, which I will show later. Yeah, and that's why they are the top 5 to look at. So these are the top exported varieties into Asia, with Alfonso mango from India at the top. I like to highlight that because it's actually very similar to the Ataulfo in Mexico. So the Ataulfo is a bit smaller, very, very small difference. Similar shape, similar bricks level, and that's why we believe that it will do well in the Asian market. It is also quite similar to the honey mango. Here you also call it honey mango. Thailand also calls it honey mango. So there is a way that we can kind of work it out. A lot of consumer education is needed when it comes to educating people more about Mexican mangoes, because Asia is very familiar with mangoes, whether it's cutting, preparing. It's more about how Mexico mangoes stand out compared to the rest of the country of origins. So, like Ron and Karine has said, actually there are a lot of differences when it comes to different continents, and Asia is the continent with the most countries. It actually has 49 countries, so that's why we have a lot of different cultures as well, separated by the sea. So the first one I want to bring up is actually the bricks level. So bricks level meaning that even after harvesting, the mango still ripens. Sometimes even if they want to buy the mango, they don't want it super ripe. So for example, Singapore aims at a bricks level upon arrival at 18 to 20. Yeah. And then another one to take note of is actually the eating quality as well. So we have a lot of dishes that are prepared in North Asia, where China, Japan, Korea are at. They use it for desserts. You can see in the pictures, you have like your mango sticky rice, you have the ice cream with the mango and sago. So another way that people actually eat it in Asia is mango salad. Especially now when Thailand, I think Thai cuisine is everywhere. F&B places all offer Thai salad, Thai mango salad. So the Thai mango salad is more firm. It's unripe mangoes. And then what we feel is that when it comes to all these food and services, you would not have to send your grade 1. If you have grade 2 available as well, there is a market for it. So this is how mangoes are presented in supermarkets in Southeast Asia. You can see the difference between Philippines, Singapore, and Thailand. So the mangoes are sold in pieces. So you can see them on promotion at maybe 50% off or 1-for-1, bundle pack, that kind of thing. So these are the different representations. So another one to take note is actually the country temperature, whether it's tropical or temperate. So if you see, can you see the equator line from the first one to the fourth one? So if you see here, there's the word equator. So all these countries, right, between the second and the fourth are actually tropical year-round. So mangoes in Asia are actually considered a summer fruit. So you eat it to quench your thirst, you feel it's very refreshing when you eat it. So during the colder months, let's say between, for North Asia, it'll be like December to January, that period, mango demand drops a bit, yeah. So they'll focus on other fruits and vegetables, but they do come back. So why we feel that there is still a chance for mangoes in Asia is because it can cover the gap that the Southeast Asian mangoes seasonality cannot cover right now. So another one to take note is also purchasing power. So a lot of economies use actually the Big Mac model. So you can see from McDonald's, Big Mac, the price of Big Mac in different countries will kind of determine the purchasing power and how much disposable income they have. Yeah. So you can calculate maybe like an optimal price, but don't go looking on the McDonald's website yet. I'll show you a hack later. So with Asia having more higher levels of education nowadays, you can see the literacy rate up here. There are more people, more educated consumers concerned about sustainability, technological advancements, health consciousness. Consumers become more prevalent across the whole public. So these are things that you will need to take note when it comes to whether it's your marketing to your purchasers, B2B or B2C. Because it's very easy nowadays with the internet. You just whip out your phone and then you can just type in, oh, is this company good or bad? So it would make or break. The internet footprint is very important for your company nowadays. Yeah. So this is a bit interesting. It's about purchasing trends in Asia. Nowadays, a lot of retailers are moving from importer, distributor, the middleman, to direct from farm. So actually that comes from two reasons. The first one is because they need more profit because of the increased cost of goods, operation, a lot of pressure from consumers as well to keep price as low as possible in order to stay competitive. They also feel that by going to the farmer themselves, they will be assured the country of origin is correct, because they have been duped a few times where the middleman just swaps. And then maybe you buy mangoes from like Mexico, but actually you're getting mangoes from China. Yeah, so the middleman earns a lot, but the retailer loses trust from their consumers. So when you think about wanting to work directly with a retailer, this is where a lot more stable volume comes in, you can fulfill and all that. So the upside of it is that you have increased profitability because you won't have as much price pressure from the middleman. You would be able to get stable volumes. And then you have increased brand visibility because you're working directly with the retailer. So that means that you can have more control of like, oh, maybe the promotions you want to do, any events you want to do for your mangoes. But you need to know the downside as well. So one of it is the high admin costs, which means whether you register with the company, with the retailer, your listing fees when you create a new product, any promotional support that you need to provide for the retailer as well. Another one is also a very big risk in rejections, which means that the moment you send one whole load. The middleman would usually sort it out for you. Maybe there are some grade 2 in your cartons, and then they will sell it to the wholesale market. Once the retailer sees that your quality is like maybe not good in 1 or 2, if it's more than 5% for major defects and 10% for minor defects, they will just reject the whole shipment. So you will need to find your own way. And then the last one is that no matter what you do, you need to fulfill the volume for the retailer, because otherwise, a lot of retailers nowadays, they actually penalize you for non-fulfillment, which means that you need to pay a fine. So a lot of suppliers, what they do is that they will buy from the wholesale market, which is fine, but that means that you might incur a loss from actually buying from the market to sell to them as well. So that's something you need to take note of. Yeah. This one is about import flexibility between Asian countries. So the higher they are on the ranking, the more open the market is. So for example, Singapore and Hong Kong, especially because the two of them do not really grow a lot of produce themselves, they actually have more open markets than the rest. You only need your invoice, your airway bill, and your packing list. That's it. You don't even need your certificate of analysis, your phytosanitary cert, all that. So if you want to go into Asia, the easiest way to break in is into these two countries. And then once you get a feel of Asia, you feel that you're more confident to take on the bigger guys like Japan, Korea, China, then you can move on from there. But if you are already working with some of these bigger countries like Japan, I think that it is much easier to go into these countries once you get a hold of everything. So my last slide here would be the strategies to kind of target the Asian countries. The first one would be the emergence of the internet. As I've said previously, your internet footprint is very important, especially nowadays when maybe you don't go to a lot of trade shows, or the customer doesn't go to a lot of trade shows. They did not get to meet you, so they could look for you via your website and contact you from there. A lot more reach this way. Another one is that it's important for the financial due diligence to make sure that you're a legitimate company. A lot of companies also look at your internet footprint. So the next one would be marketing. Marketing, whether it is the branding on your stickers, on your cartons, to make sure that your brand is out there, is known. It is so that you have a stronger foothold of the market share that you are getting. It is no longer about the price. You don't have to work as hard in terms of being price competitive. Once you get a strong foothold, you get the consumers to understand more about your brand and get trusted due to the consistency of how good your product is. Yeah. Another one is also any sustainability practices, especially important for more educated consumers. And any upcoming trade shows that you are attending, maybe you would promote it on LinkedIn or on your website or even on Facebook, so that there are people who will want to reach out to you and after that get you meetings and all that. And any upcoming varieties that are coming into the season also. And then you can link customers back to the website for more information via the product, whether it's your sticker or your carton or even your invoice. So I did add a QR code of a good website example. So it's an Australian mango that is patented. It's called the Calypso mango. It's a good example of just a landing page, which means that it's just a one-pager. It does not have to be an elaborate website, but at least people know of your company and know of your brand and where you come from. And then lastly would be research. So this is the hack. There are a lot of online supermarkets in Asia nowadays. Because it's convenient, you don't have to step out of your house because a lot of us are introverted. So one of the biggest online stores right now is Shopee. So you'll find them in a lot of Asian countries. You go onto the Shopee website and you just type mangoes, and then you can convert from the local currency there to whether it's USD or pesos, and you kind of have an idea of how much you need to sell your product at, and then you can work backwards based on the price that it is selling in the market right now. Of course, it would be better if you can find a similar variety to what you are growing, but it works as a starter. So others would be like Kohl's, CP as well, for any the ideal price points. Yeah. In terms of looking more closely at what market share, the volume that you have, you can look at OEC World. So it's actually a government research kind of website where you can see very easily what is the percentage that is like exported or imported from what countries into which countries. And then lastly will be any supermarket social media, whether it's Telegram, Facebook, Instagram, to kind of see what kind of promotions that they can do so that you can maybe offer some promotions in order to penetrate the market or to work with the supermarket. Yeah. So that's the end of my presentation. If you guys have any questions and would like to work with Asia, please look for me later. Thank you.
Let's switch into Spanish. Bueno, muchas gracias por esta interesante presentación. Realmente nos ha sorprendido pues, cómo tanto del mercado asiático, mercado europeo, de cómo hemos ido reduciendo nuestra participación en estos, principalmente en Europa. Entonces, retomando lo que habló Ron, me gustaría preguntarte, hemos estado hablando mucho de educación, y bueno, pensando en esto es, what emerging trends information do you think will be the best for mango in your market for promotion?
So promotion is key, and there's a couple pieces. You can't look at a single promotion strategy. You have to have a fully integrated. We heard a little bit about this yesterday with the retail panel. A fully integrated marketing strategy for the Canadian market. First off, understanding the demographic you're selling to. So the slides that you saw earlier about the younger demographic, the higher income demographic, store penetration, but also looking at who your partner are. So the issues we have today is consumers don't understand how to, and what I found interesting, Rubén, is very similar things amongst all of our markets. When you look at the buying, you look at the consumer behavior, like I find that amazing on a global level. But that also tells everybody we have a lot of work to do, but at least it's the same work that we're doing, but focused in the regions where we want to focus on. So when we're looking at Canada, social media does come into play. We heard that yesterday. But who are the influencers and how are you leveraging the right social media tools? So you know, the Canadian government has shut down the corporate offices for TikTok because of cybersecurity threats and concerns. It's not saying TikTok is not used in Canada by consumers, but it's showing a beginning signs of what potentially could happen to that platform. So you have to begin looking at who is using the platforms that you need to target. So if you have a consumer 25 to 35, what platforms are they using the most? Who are the influencers on those platforms? And you don't have to spend millions. One, we don't have millions, but two, focus in on some very basic elements. First, we haven't talked a lot about restaurants. A little bit in the Asian market. Restaurants are a gateway to changing behavior. And you need to look at how you influence chefs, how you influence food bloggers, how you influence that social media channel to get people excited about everything you can do with a mango. And how you take the mango and introduce it to a range of different foods. On your pizza, in your pasta, in your salad. Like there's all sorts of ways you can use it. But then how do you use it? And how do you educate? In Canada, we have a dietitian network that is very strong. So working with dietitians is another strategy. So social media, dietitians, and then at a grassroots level, are you working with, at a provincial, schools? And starting that with younger children, understanding the product. So there's a range of tactics you can take. The biggest tactic is your retail customer. Tasting the product in store is a massive opportunity. It's not inexpensive, but it is an opportunity to have them make an on-site purchase decision. But what's very important, and we heard this yesterday, that product has to taste great. The bricks level have to be right. Canadians like a nice sweet mango. The fiber content, it can't be high in fiber. It has to slice nicely. And you want to make sure it's a repeat purchase. So please, do not ship your product early to the country. It's always nice to be first to market, but it will kill you if it's not a good product. And it will ruin it for everyone else in the market because the consumer will not go back to the product twice. So last piece, when you want to bring it all together, in-store purchasing, drive that behavior. And the biggest piece is develop your relationship with your customer. So social media, dietitians, and make sure you're aware of how to educate. So we do something with Canadians called What You Can Buy for $20 through our consumption program called Half Your Plate. That consumption program, we tell every Canadian every week, here's what your fruit basket could look like when you go to the retail store for $20. Remember, food inflation is still important to them. How do we make sure mangoes are in that food basket every week to get them to buy? And for Mexican mangoes, you have a strategy of success because it is a seasonal product in Canada and you are key in our summer months for mango production. So you can be the top of the mountain for mangoes when Canadians are looking for them the most. But you have to make sure you're in front of the Canadians so they know what they're purchasing.
Thank you very much for that inside information. I mean, it's very useful for us. In the same way, I would like, Karin, if you can tell us what strategies can be deployed to educate consumers to increase consumption in Europe.
Well, thank you for that. I think more than only focusing on increasing consumption in Europe, and this is something that became very evident from my presentation earlier, is that it's not so much about getting more consumers in Europe, but it's rather getting a bigger share of Mexican mangoes on the Dutch and European market. It's very clear that imports are already very high, but they're all coming from Peru and Brazil. So why is that? And I think that it might be good to do a thorough analysis of what the differences are and why they are being successful and Mexico is not, even though there is a lot of mango being produced here and a lot being exported. Is it maybe because the Mexican market is staying a little bit in its comfort zone? I do notice also in other fruit exports that it might seem scary to go to Europe because it's far away and it's difficult to get there, and there's well, a whole ocean in between. There's not a direct ocean line between Mexico and the Netherlands, and that makes things more difficult. Nowadays, most exports are done by air trade, but that doesn't mean that there are no options. In fact, we see more and more that most of the deals that are being made right now in terms of Incoterms are done under ex-works conditions, meaning that you just deliver the product in the packages that have been required in Mexico, and you can facilitate some of the logistics, but you're no longer responsible for it. And I think it takes away a lot of the risks that you may feel with exportation to the Netherlands and Europe. And I think it might, really make a difference. I mean, there's a really big pie out there, and I think it's time to take a piece of it.
Okay, interesting. Thank you very much. And finally, Esther, you said about there's a big opportunity for Ataulfo mangoes, but we need to let them know to the consumers how is the agricultural practices here. I don't know if you can tell us more about it and how it can be useful information for the growers.
So I think that talking about your point, I think it's two parts as well. The first part is how do we differentiate the Mexican Ataulfo mangoes versus the Alfonso and the honey mango in Thailand. So a lot of times in Asia, what we do is we set up sampling booths in the supermarkets itself, or we work with restaurants or chefs on TikTok, Instagram, all that, to kind of promote what the product actually tastes like. But also on top of that, more than just the product, about the sustainability practices. One way, like Ron has said, is about traceability. So when your customer is able to kind of just maybe scan the QR code, and then it will lead you to your web page, or it will lead you to more nutritional value of the mangoes, how the route from which part of Mexico, where the route that he has taken to get to that market. That would be very useful also for the consumer to rest assured that what they are buying is safe for consumption, is delicious, and it shouldn't be any like sustainability, like very sustainable. I think another one to take note also, more about specific promotions, is actually gift boxes. So Asia is a lot about gift giving, and when you go to like your future husband's parents' house, or you go to your boss's house, like housewarming or something, usually people bring a box of fruits. So a lot of how Asian suppliers sell their products nowadays is that they decorate their box maybe a little prettier. They add a bit more like pictures. Maybe it is during that season, Valentine's Day, or it's Mother's Day. And then only for that short period of time, it will be a gift box. So it will also cater to the festive season or for the seasonality. So that is something that you can think of as well to kind of promote your brand. Yeah.
Thing that we, in general, how do you tell your story, right? The narrative of the Mexican mango is the most important story. And we hear a little bit of sustainability, we hear a little bit of traceability. And I think for everyone in this room, you have to have confidence that you have a brand, not your corporate brand or your product brand, but the Mexican mango product, the market, has a global brand of excellence that cannot be tarnished. Avocados from Mexico did this, right? They have brand established in the US and Canada and around the world where people see it and they understand, oh, quality, taste, beautiful oil, right? Like you get a product almost every time that you expect. How do you generate that brand and how do you create that center of excellence for mangoes so that the point of gifting in Asia or in Canada looking at alignment of events, and I know yesterday we saw on the mango board talking about Super Bowl and everything, you know, you may not be able to be at the Super Bowl, but minor football in the US is big. How do you make mangoes part of minor football? In Canada, football, as in traditional football, soccer, is growing in a significant sport. They eat an orange at the game. Well, how do you make a mango part of that experience? But the story is, who is the farmer? What is the quality? What is the sustainability practice? And in Canada and growing around the world, are you using forced or child labor? Because what's happening in Canada now is every importer has to report to the government if they are buying from a country where is there a potential for forced labor or child labor. And you're going to start seeing this not only in Canada, but you're going to start seeing this around the world on reporting. So all of these things tell a story that you have to be able to push, and you don't do it alone. The Mango Board, your state officials, some of them are here, your agriculture councils, work with them and pool a strategy together so that you can market as a state and a country to drive that change, not only in Canada and the US, but around the world.
And even we can learn from other, I mean, as you said, the avocados from Mexico, but we have Chile, from Chile.
Yes.
They changed their mind or their mindset. They used to go, for example, with the cherries. They used to go to the US, and now all the 100% of the exports goes to China. So that's a mental shift, but it's also an industry effort. So that's as you said, we need to work together and well, to share that stories that need to be heard from
And I think, Rubén, the other side of that comes back into market access. So how do you make market access easy? And the Chileans have figured that out with USDA as an example on inspection systems in their country to make an easier flow of product, you know, leaving the country. And when another country like Canada sees that system in place, there's a higher trust level from our government looking at the systems that would be available to import.
Yeah. Okay, we are short in time, but we would like to have some questions from the audience. So, okay, can you help me with the microphone, please? Is there a question?
I could probably speak loud enough.
No, it's not. Yeah, the microphone is coming.
Voy a hacer mi pregunta en inglés. I think one of the things that I would like to hear in particular, because we have a room full of producers, is what the competitive field is like. Because I think that's really important for the Mexican mango, in particular, not so much for Canada, but for the Asian markets and the European markets. With all of the increased production in Africa and different parts of India, I think that that's kind of a real important thing to note on is what's the competitive, what do we have to compete with from Mexico? Time frames, price-wise, labor, etc.
Well, if it's okay, I'll start from the Dutch point of view. When we speak to importers, something that really strikes me is that when I introduce myself and then tell them that I am there to speak about the Mexican offer, that I sometimes get a little bit of a long face saying like, oh, it's difficult. So I think there's also maybe some cultural component there in which I believe there's a bit of over-promising done from the Mexican side. And then when the export is really starting to grow, that's when we see the first problems. So for instance, you say like, okay, my importer's asking me for, I don't know, 100,000 tons. I have 80, let's see what I can do, and I will try to reach out and to get the other 20 so that I can fulfill this request. Whereas the Dutch party would much rather hear, well, I have 80 that I can send you, and perhaps there will be another 20, but I have 80. So being very specific and honest and upfront is something that is very valued in the Netherlands. And there, I think there is some room for improvement from both sides to understand a little bit more about the other party. In the long term, there's definitely an interest from Dutch importers. They recognize the quality of Mexican mangoes, but something needs to be done to help build the bridge and to forge it into something more long-term, I believe.
So I think I'll speak for Asia in a sense that when you talk about the competitive market, it really depends on which country you're looking at, as well as whether it's the premium or the mass market. So it's important to be specific and focus on where you want to achieve first, so that you'll be able to ideally hit. So for example, in China, what they like to do is that you have to like start drinking with them first during the drink session, then they'll talk about business during the session. So there are other ways as well. For example, like in the Muslim countries, they can't really drink liquor. So it is also very business forward. It's important to consider, for example, the Altalfo versus the Alfonso. The Alfonso is for the premium market. So when you consider that, and you consider the cost that is incurred, you will also need to take note, and that's why you look at the online supermarkets to figure out what is your price point, and whether if you work it backwards, you take out maybe the 30% from the supermarket profit. Does it work for you working backwards from your costs, including your freight, your labor costs, and everything? So I do agree that there are some places, for example, India and China, who have cheaper labor, but it does not mean that they are overall cheaper as a product itself. Yeah.
I guess one of my questions in particular for Europe, and I'm not sure how much for Asia, but I think it's growing, is that there's an increase of production in Africa to fill the void for mangoes. And it kind of coincides with Mexican production. So how does that affect those markets?
Yeah, well, first of all, you are completely right. There is an increase from the African markets. However, I think that imports are so high, and still, by far, most of it is coming from South America. So I think that even if we only focus on, adding to that stream from the Americas, there is still a really, really huge market available. When we look at the varieties, we also see that most of the varieties that are being grown in Africa are indeed very suitable for the European market. But I don't know, I think a little competition is always healthy. And well, there's also the seasonality of the product to be considered. So there is a lot of opportunity, but I do think it is about time that Mexico also takes the first steps to be more in the spotlight and to be more considered in Europe.
¿Alguna otra pregunta? Ahí en el fondo.
Hi, good afternoon. It's a pleasure meeting you all. My name is Santiago Sanchez. I would like to know if mango from Mexico needs to have a step up, not just in the producing the fresh mango, but giving this add value in a delicious product in which we could easier and in a better way get into your markets, like freeze drying process in which Mexican producers could give the step up that we need so that your markets could be easier or available for exports in, I don't know, not having any seasonality within the mango, right? So I don't know if it's an opportunity in which we should start to explode in each one of your markets. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for your question. I think for Asia-wise, we talk about Mexican mangoes versus the rest. If we do enough research to see that there is a difference between the freeze-dried mangoes in Mexico versus maybe Thailand or China, we definitely can work it out. For Asia-wise, I would still suggest the fresh mango method, even though it's for a short period. A lot of Asians would focus on that country of origin and buy a lot during that season rather than to buy year-round, because all these processed fruit products are not as popular as the fresh produce itself.
For the Canadian market, key strategy overall, you're not wrong. You want to have a 12-month strategy so the consumer doesn't sway away from a purchase behavior, and that it becomes a eating behavior in their morning routine, their evening routine. We heard Loblaws note like smoothies, frozen mango into a smoothie. I think we have to look at how the public is looking to consume. So if it is a fast pace, I need a dried nut and fruit pack to gain energy because I'm active and I'm biking or running, then how do you market that? I don't disagree. If it's a smoothie strategy for the morning or some type of diet approach, then the frozen product has opportunity. So I think, yes, how do you diversify your channels for production and pass the market? But the reality is, for the Canadian market, the fresh is still king. Right? We need to try and build and drive that. We've seen the continuous growth since 2014, and we just have to continue to focus and invest in that fresh growth with the other pieces as options as well. But you also have to look at, when you go into added value, are you competitive in the market cost-wise? All the other attributes come into play as well. So.
Yeah, and as far as Europe goes, as you could see from my presentation as well, there's a lot of value added in the Netherlands to mangoes. And that is driven mainly also by the larger importers that are now setting up centers that are very integral centers where they do post-harvest ripening, they cut the mangoes, they put them into plastic containers. I don't think that you should try to compete with that from Mexico. I think that would be very, very difficult. And also considering the costs of transportation, that's probably not a very good deal. However, we also see that on the European market, there is an increase in demand, customer demand for this plastic already cut fruit. So yes, it is happening, but I don't think it's an opportunity for Mexican mangoes as such. I think the focus should be definitely on fresh products.
Okay, thank you very much, guys. ¿Tenemos alguna otra pregunta? Okay, Roger.
Hi, my question is for the two women from Singapore and from Holland. The access of Mexican mangoes to Europe is very limited because we have really terrible shipping from Mexico to Europe. Some of us here in this room send mangoes by air. Can you is there any way we can figure out how much air product is going into the different markets in Europe? Or is it all sort of lumped together with shipping, stuff by boat? And my question to the woman from Singapore is, I believe you said the largest supplier of mangoes to China is from Thailand. Is that all hot water treated? Like, Mexican mangoes have to be hot water treated to go into the States. Do Thailand mangoes have to be hot water treated to go into China?
If it's okay, I'll take the first question. What was it again? Sorry.
Can you differentiate between what arrives by air and what arrives by boat?
Yeah, right. Sorry about that. So it is always difficult to get your hands on actual factual data and to get the right figures. So we actually, within Holland House, we have a platform that gives us details on imports and exports by sea exclusively. So what we could do is look at the total imports and then subtract that amount to get an estimation of it. But in preparation of today, I was taking a look at that particular platform, and I saw there were 59 transactions in 2023 by sea, and everything else was moved by air. But once more, what we also see from importers that are doing business successfully at this particular moment with Mexico is that they take care of everything after packaging here in Mexico. So the exporter can facilitate the logistics, but it's not an actual part of it.
Okay, thank you.
¿Puedo repetir lo correspondiente a?
I was just wondering, you know, Mexican mangoes have to be hot water treated or irradiated to go into the United States. Do Thailand mangoes have to have, do they have some sort of restriction like that to get into China?
So for China-wise, they don't have to do all this heat treatment or any of the post-harvesting, these kind of things, but it would be helpful to do pre-cooling so that the mango can stay unripe longer to be able to reach China, and after that ripen from there. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, just to add, the only country in the Asia side of the world that needs all this kind of treatment would be Australia, where they are more concerned about any pests or diseases that would impact the soil and the produce there.
Okay. ¿Alguien más? ¿Alguna otra pregunta? Nos quedan 5 minutos. Aquí en el frente.
Buenas tardes con todos, Fitoma España, y estoy contento de estar acá en este gran evento. Dudas con respecto a variedades. Conozco el desarrollo del mango a nivel internacional y veo que Brasil ha desarrollado mucho variedades, y el cual es un aprendizaje increíble sobre las variedades y la gran cantidad de variedades que maneja Brasil. Pregunta, esa transferencia de Brasil hacia los países de variedades no se está dando sobre el concepto mercado, porque entiendo que China es lo que yo creo, y Europa y también Estados Unidos tienen tendencia a variedades rojas, más a rojas. Pero el mercado de México es amarillo. ¿Qué va a pasar en el tiempo? ¿Ataulfo seguirá siendo un prospecto para el mundo, o es que necesitamos comenzar a trabajar y desarrollar variedades rojas? Y dos, el tema de involución de semilla en la fisiología, que dicen que el mango no debería tener semilla, que la semilla es muy grande, muy chica, o el mango es muy grande, o quiero un mango más chico. ¿Qué va a pasar en el mercado? ¿Vamos a seguir con amarillas, variedades tropicales, amarillas, rojos, variedades rojas? ¿Y qué va a pasar con el tamaño, los portes? ¿Vamos a seguir manejando, eso se va a mantener, o es que deberíamos desarrollar variedades con tamaños más pequeños?
Pues creo que son preguntas bastante específicas y muy técnicas. Haré un esfuerzo. Tienes toda la razón que justamente las variedades rojas son mucho más demandadas en Europa. Y inclusive diría que, bueno, yo he tenido visitas desde Holanda y pasamos pues uno de esos stands de mangos en la calle y que me preguntan, ¿qué fruta es esta? O sea, no se reconoce como tal. Y tampoco preveo que esa imagen vaya a cambiar muy pronto, por lo que pues, si se trata de jugar en el mercado europeo, yo diría que sí, se tendría que enfocar más en esas variedades rojas, sí. Sin embargo, esto no cierra ninguna puerta, porque también vemos mucho interés siempre en Países Bajos y también en otros países en Europa, pues por otros destinos exóticos, por ejemplo, también la cocina asiática, ¿no? Y ahí sí se utiliza también otro tipo de mango. Entonces, en un futuro sí me podría imaginar que también conozcamos el mango amarillo en Europa, pero pues tomará su tiempito. Y nuevamente, ¿no sería mejor enfocarnos en el potencial que ya existe?
Yeah. So for Asia side, actually the color does not really matter. We have both red and yellow mangoes. What the Asians usually look at is actually the sweetness of the mango and how big it is. So there are countries who prefer smaller mangoes because of the small household size. There are countries that require bigger ones to look more premium in the market. So it really depends on what you look at. But for Asia side, usually how it would appeal more to the customer would usually be that they already know of this. So there is a lot of consumer education that needs to happen. Yeah, that, okay, you know, Mexican mangoes are good. I've tried it once, I want it again. It's consistent in quality and consistent in sweetness. And a lot of word of mouth promotion happens a lot, like between the housewives, between families, especially gifting. So yeah, I think it's less about the color and more about the sweetness and the quality of the mango that arrives.
The technical question you ask in Canada is different by region, right? But the introduction of different varietals is strong. The bigger question you have to ask, and I want to, because I think the ladies did a great job on talking about color, size of the pit, of the seed. This is something we hear from consumers more and more. And, you know, if we can find genetics that can reduce that size, gain more fruit, more out of the product, it's a value perception for the consumer. So strategically, if I was trying to grow and work towards that genetic, I would be looking at that for the Canadian market. Additionally, it comes back to, you talked about seed size, color. There's one more, size. If you're retailing and you want to hit the price point, you need a diversity of size. So again, it's not an easy question. Should I only be going big? Should I grow small? We have a great trend towards discount stores in Canada because of food inflation. Discount stores are selling smaller sized mangoes, right? To meet the price point they need to for that consumer. So you need to be able to have that diversity of size to meet the market and the segments in the market and the price points that can potentially provide the best return to you as a grower, if that makes sense.
Ok, muchísimas gracias. Ya estamos sobre el tiempo y por respetar todo el programa, les queremos dar las gracias. Muchas gracias por esta conversación. Creo que fue muy ilustrativa para todos nosotros. Muchas gracias.